everyone, and welcome to the Wright Perspective. Today, we're going to recap and review the 1980 musical drama, Fame. Do you want fame? Well, we wouldn't mind some. So please be sure to like, share, and subscribe on every platform that you use.
We're going to live forever.
Okay, let's get into it. I shared that with Jaymes. I shared that with Jaymes earlier, and he just humors me. He just laughs at my.
That's that delusional love. I love delusional love.
Okay,
my favorite thing.
Let's get into it. Okay, Fame, 1980. Okay, it was directed by Alan Parker and written by Christopher Gore. This film made $42 million against a budget of $8.5 million, and it received a ton of awards and nominations, including an NAACP Image Award for Outstanding Motion Picture, a Golden Globe Award for Best Original Song, Fame, and 2 Academy Awards for Best Original Song, Fame, and Best Original Score. And actually, Jaymes and I were watching a little, some background videos, and we learned that this movie was the first time that at the Academy Awards, there was 2 songs from the same movie up for Best Song, a Best Original Song. They had, Fame was nominated, and so was Out Here on My Own. And Irene Cara sang both of those. Either way, she was going home with something. Love it. And so that movie was also inspiration for a TV show, Fame, that ran for 6 seasons. Oh, you didn't like the show? Wasn't your jam? Okay. The movie was also inspiration for a TV show that ran for 6 seasons, which included several of the movie actors. There was a stage musical that has been staged all over the world, ran for a long time in the UK. I mean, this is since the 80s, and as recently as 2019 in the UK, okay?
Wow.
A movie remake was released in 2009, and some attribute the success of some of these recent shows and movies like High School Musical, Glee. People attribute their success to Fame movie and the Fame TV show. And y'all get ready for it. In April 2023, there was an article on deadline.com, and they basically said that, there is talk in MGM about doing now a new franchise with Fame, a new television show based on Fame. So long story short, it lives. Okay. And then according to an article on shondaland.com that was basically about celebrating the 40th anniversary of the movie, they said, and this is a quote, that the show and the movie together, quote, inspired the inception of performing arts high schools all over the globe, end quote.
Wow.
So I did a Google search to try to validate that or to get us some numbers, I was like, performing arts schools, quantity over time, growth of performing arts. Like I did a couple Google searches I couldn't find because I wanted to know the numbers, How many performing arts schools were there in 1980 in the United States versus now? Anyway, I couldn't find it quickly, but it was on shondaland.com, which leads me to believe it was a well-researched, vetted statement. So anyway, for some, this collection of facts would be enough to consider this movie a classic. But today, we will determine whether it is a classic from the right perspective. We will do a recap, we'll discuss the movie, and then we'll take a vote using a voting symbol that we will pick especially for this discussion. But we got to start with intros. Kick us off, bro.
Hi, I'm Aubrey Wright. I'm the oldest.
I'm Genia Wright. I'm the middle.
I am Brittany Wright, and I am the youngest.
And I'm Jaymes Jorsling, and I'm the cutest. Oh my gosh, if you're new to our podcast, this is my 8-month-old daughter, and I didn't mean to invite her to this portion of the podcast today, but she wanted to be here, clearly. So
That's it.
All right, y'all. So let's pick a voting symbol for today's show. And I have one, and it's pretty awesome. Skylar loved it.
Well, that's good because I have nothing.
Bro, you don't have one. Okay, here we go.
Maybe Ambien.
Okay. Okay, so our regular viewers and listeners know, like, normally Aubrey will bring in ideas that are like the iconic imagery, from the content. I'll come up with something that's a little bit more like about the themes, and Brittany doesn't prep. She allows the spirit to just use
That's
her
it.
real
Jazz.
time.
It's jazz. Mm-hmm.
And so my idea, y'all, is for, and Skylar loves this. She's so, do you see how excited? The voting symbol I would like to recommend is a hot lunch.
Could you turn your mic off right quick? Could you mute it real fast? I'm sorry.
Oh,
It's
wow.
a hot lunch.
There's something happening in the background.
Oh my gosh, you guys, your enthusiasm is overwhelming. Thank you for that support. So, why a hot lunch? Well, because a hot lunch is something that was provided by this school, by this performing arts school, that the students needed and couldn't necessarily get elsewhere. Okay. And in the song, and this is so important, if you like read through the lyrics of the song, the lunch is not free. The hot lunch is not free. There's a line in the song where she's Irene Cara is singing. She says, "Shady Sadie, Shady Sadie, serving lady." She's a serving lady, but don't pay her no mind, no. She'll take every dime. She got a one-a-day lunch. It's good for all the bunch, yeah. Listen, what is she talking about? She is talking about, listen, you want something? You got to be ready to pay for it, okay? And this is where you're going to get it. You're going to get it from Shady Sadie. To me, it just felt like it really was analogous with the movie. The other thing about Shady Sadie in that song is that she's capitalizing on her moment, okay? This is one time per day where all eyes are on her, okay? And that's really what is fame? Fame is being the focal point, getting the attention. And the other thing, so even if you kind of move away from the lyrics of the song, the actual moment where that song is performed in the movie, it's a moment of spontaneous performance. All of the children who are just brimming with creative energy. They're together in a non planned moment, and they find themselves just using their various crafts to just celebrate together. So that's another reason why I think hot lunch could be our. This is how Skylar shows excitement.
Skylar wants a hot lunch right now.
Isn't she even cute when she's crying and upset? Oh,
that's because she's faking. Are you faking?
She's faking.
You are faking.
Okay, and look, I just have to point out while she's up here, she has on a shirt that says "Emerging Artist." We put this on specifically for the podcast because Skylar wants fame. Okay. And we got this shirt at the Whitney Museum here in New York. But we just love it. She's an emerging artist. How sweet. Okay, so that's my recommendation for a voting symbol.
She already got her career path.
Oh,
laid out.
Well, she's multifaceted. She's also working on a book. Okay. It's so many things. So
the pressure of being Janai.
Yeah, I mean, she's up for an Olympic medal in the nationals and multiple sports.
I thought I saw her name on the Pulitzer Prize list.
Oh yeah, totally. She's totally so. All right, so bro, you didn't come up with any. Sis,
and I did. I was the whole show. I was trying. I just didn't. At first I thought leg warmers just to be funny or whatever, but
it is the 80s.
Well, plus, what I mean, in the show they were dancers wearing that type of stuff. So,
bro, you didn't even mean to, but you just led it to some trivia. People often attribute like the leg warmer craze of the 80s. They attribute it to Flashdance, but it was actually this movie that kicked it off.
Well, there you go. Leg warmers.
Mm-hmm.
There's my idea.
Boom. I love it.
What do you got, sis?
Someone doing like, I don't know really what it's called, but it's like that high kick where your back is bent all the way and then your leg is straight up. So someone doing that type of whatever
It's
that
called
stands.
it's called the bend back leg kick.
I recommend the
That's
bend
the
back leg
technical
up
term.
kick.
But straight up, we all know what you're talking about when you say
Yep.
bend back leg
Yes.
lift.
Because whatever his name is that played the one guy that I couldn't read, listen,
Leroy was the
Leroy.
character.
Leroy actually is the person I'm thinking of that would be my symbol. So you know,
Wow.
any dance step that Leroy did, that is what I'm talking. So my recommendation is Leroy.
Okay, all right. So this is a little bit of a spoiler, y'all. We actually have a guest coming in just a few minutes to join us on the podcast. This is the first guest in the history of the Wright Perspective, and it is none other than Jaymes Jorsling. So I'll introduce him more fully later. But I think because Jaymes, he's from New York, he actually auditioned at that high school, okay, and got in. So Jaymes, from off camera, which voting symbol do you like?
Okay. Sounds nice.
He started out with a supportive statement for me.
Yeah.
Hot lunch sounds nice.
Nice. But I think it went too far. I think you went too far. Not far, too far. Okay, so
Right. She passed the exit on the highway.
if we're simply talking about symbolism, those high kicks were done with leg warmers on.
Mm.
There you
Right?
go.
Now that's a Brittany methodology of putting all the potential voting symbols together.
I'm not about to say a high kick, hot lunch.
Okay.
While you're holding the hot plate, because that's what they were doing in that one scene.
And then also, I was kind of sort of there. I was a kid, but I was there. It's got to be the leg.
Leg warmer.
There you go.
Let go.
That's symbolic with that dancing. You can get cute and say kicking to the sky, you know, reaching, all those things. But symbolism, it's got to be the leg.
Wow.
It's got to be the leg.
I'll take it. I'll take it. You know, I love tying in some of our trivia to the voting symbol. Okay, so Fame must get 3 sets of leg warmers. Otherwise, and when we vote at the end, otherwise it will not be considered a classic from the Wright Perspective. All right, yay. Okay, so now let's do a quick recap. And guess what? This movie is unrecappable. I don't care what anybody says.
Recappable.
It cannot be recapped. So
Listen.
instead, you know, I just did kind of like a rundown. It's, you know, so, you know, Fame takes place in the late 70s at the High School of the Performing Arts in New York, and it follows a group of 8 kids from their audition through their senior year and graduation. Attending this school is clearly a big deal. Kids have come from all over New York to audition, and the faculty are not there to play, okay? You don't need professional training to get in, but you have to have real talent in acting, singing, or dancing, okay? And then beyond your creative major, there's also an emphasis on academic rigor. So, you know, again, not going through the movie chronologically, but let's just talk through each of the main kids, okay? So accepted in the drama department are Montgomery McNeil, Doris Finsecker, and Ralph Garcia. Montgomery McNeil, played by Paul McCrane, he's the child of a celebrity actress that we literally never see. And he's basically a latchkey kid. He basically lives alone. He's been in therapy for a long time, and he eventually has come to understand that he's gay. He doesn't seem to struggle in school in terms of his classes, but socially, he seems to struggle a bit, and he does ultimately find a best friend, and he also does over time become friends with a guy that used to bully him. Doris Finsecker, played by Maureen Teefy, she's the person that is Montgomery's best friend, okay? And I think of all of the characters, she evolves the most over the course of the film. She starts as like a shy Jewish girl, almost afraid of her own talent, okay? Her mother is so overbearing and controlling every part of her life. By the end of the movie, she's a confident, self-possessed young woman, and she actually changes her name to Dominique DuPont, and she becomes a risk taker, and she begins to, you know, create boundaries with her mother. Raul Garcia, who actually he goes by Ralph Garcia, played by Barry Miller. He's clearly struggling with how to be authentic in his Puerto Rican heritage. He has to take care of his little sisters in the evenings because it seems his mother's probably working. He is the person who was Montgomery's bully turned friend, and he's an aspiring stand-up comedian. He starts to get some positive momentum as a stand-up, but the pressure of that, the family stuff, working at night, it all leads him to a substance abuse problem. And where does he get the substances? Well, that's a great question. It's Montgomery's prescription from his therapist. Okay. So those are the main kids that are in the drama department. In the music department, we meet Bruno Martelli. He's played by Lee Curreri, and he's admitted to the school as a pianist, but he's really a keyboardist, which is different, okay? Because he's very much into synthesizing, okay? He likes electronically generated music and music production. He's bored, okay, with basic music classes. He lets them know. Okay, and at least one of his teachers, played by Albert Hague, the character's name is Mr. Sharovsky, resents him. Okay, fortunately, though, Bruno has parents that believe in him so deeply that they're very working class, but they use every cent they have to buy him equipment. And Bruno, his classmates, believe in him for sure. One classmate in particular named Coco, she believes in him so much. They end up recording music together. And listen, she has big plans for their future as a creative team. Coco's a great segue to the dance department. So Coco Hernandez, played by Irene Cara, she is in the dance department, but she's really a triple threat. She can sing, she can dance, she can act, she can do it all, okay? And she knows it, all right? And that confidence leads her to do well in school and to have great relationships with classmates. She might even be a popular girl. You don't know for sure, but there's at least that big lunchroom scene where she leads the whole school in a jam session, And so you get a sense that she's a popular girl. But that confidence is serving her so well in that environment. You take that, you combine it with just her general naivete, and that's what led her to believe she had actually been discovered, quote unquote, when a sleazeball walks up to her and invites her to be in his film, which turns out to be low budget porn. Lisa Monroe is also in the dance department, and she has apparently been dancing her whole life. And it really is her whole identity, but she's never been great at it. And as one of her teachers, Miss Berg, played by Joanna Merlin, points out, she doesn't even really work hard at it. And so when Lisa finally accepts that she is not going to be a dancer, she joins the drama department. But frankly, you don't get a sense that she's going to excel there either. Leroy Johnson, played by Gene Anthony Ray, is also in the dance department. He's the last kid that's really featured. And he kind of made his way into the school on accident. He attends auditions to help out a friend and ends out outperforming her. And of course, they kind of move him into the audition, and he goes quite willingly and happily, and he gets admitted for dance, and he excels in the dancing program, but he struggles in the academic classes because he can't really read. You get a sense that he might be semi-homeless and he doesn't really have a support system. By the end of the movie, he's the only one, though, with a firm offer on the table. He's been invited to be a part of Alvin Ailey. He also seems to graduate, even though his English teacher, Mrs. Sherwood, played by Meara, threatens him all the time. If you don't do your work, you're not going to pass. So throughout the course of the movie, we meet other kids as well, including one that was doing so well in school in terms of his performance. He was actually recruited by agents to leave high school and go to Hollywood, only to end up working back in New York as a server a few years later in a restaurant. We also met a ballet student that was clearly headed to a masterful career, but she got pregnant, and she was, okay, let me try that again. We also met a white ballet student that was clearly headed to a masterful career, but got pregnant while dating a Black guy as a stunt for her parents. And she ended up having to get an abortion to keep her professional trajectory. So you get little slices of other students as well. By the end of high school, none of the kids have necessarily succeeded or failed, but they have definitely grown, and you get a sense that opportunities are available. And so frankly, every possibility still exists by the end of the movie. The end.
That's yeah.
How else
I
could
was
you
wondering how
recap
you were
this
gonna do
movie?
that.
I mean,
Listen.
you know what I mean?
And I would have left a couple of them kids out. So
The only other way you could have done it is said this was what happened freshman year. This is what happened sophomore year, and so
Yes.
forth.
And
But
you had
I
to
mean,
go through
that
all-
was
for
the-
me, it would have
7
been
of those
like,
kids for each year, and it was just
exactly
like,
that's too much.
yeah. I mean,
Well-
only thing I could think is like it was a movie about kids in a performing arts school and their
Yeah,
various
that's-
trials and tribulations.
Okay.
Man,
That's-
perfect opportunity to introduce who our very first guest on this is. We've been 4 seasons, y'all, talking about the possibility of having guests, and we're finally doing it. And our first guest is Jaymes Jorsling. Oh, you want to hear a little bit about him? Okay, sure thing. So, Jaymes, he is an actor of the stage, film, and television. He has been on, shows like The Wire, Law and Order, The Affair. He was lead in Randall Doughton's Academy Award-winning short, A Alike. He's been on stages in New York and in regional theaters all across the country. And a play that he wrote, Aloft Modulation, actually ran off Broadway and was nominated for many awards. And he also wrote the script for Grammy nominee Gerald Clayton's sprawling oeuvre. Did I pronounce oeuvre right? Oeuvre. I can't. Sprawling oeuvre, Piedmont Blues, A Search for Salvation. And it's actually touring the world right now. It's been touring the world, I think, since 2017, if I recall correctly. And so, relevant for us today, Jaymes is Brooklyn born and raised. Okay. So, this whole phenomenon of the high school of the performing arts, Jaymes was actually there, and he was there as a young aspiring performer. So, we thought it was the perfect time for us to bring in a guest, none other than Jaymes Jorsling. Come over. Yes, come on over.
Skylar,
We'll
can I
see.
sit next to you? How do we do this?
I pulled in a chair, a kitchen chair.
Hey, folks. Should I keep
James, welcome, a ghost of the
Welcome.
podcast, because
Oh,
maybe off,
everybody has
babe,
been
'cause I
hearing
didn't
your
set the
name.
light.
Ah, okay. Well,
Is that good? Yeah, because I didn't set the light up for
good
glasses.
for me? Good for me. It's wonderful hearing you guys and hearing the lack of exuberance for such a film.
Say more about that, babe. Say more. Well, first of all, I to kick off the discussion, because there's so many pieces,
Mhm.
but I'd love to hear about the experience of it coming out. And I don't know, Aubrey, if you remember when it came out.
Can I say something real quick? Janiyah, you were dressed exactly like the painting behind you.
Yo.
So weird.
There you go.
Like,
you
it
are.
looks
I
like
see
he
it.
did
Wow.
it on purpose.
Yes.
Which
Yes, you are.
discuss who's the artist of that painting.
It's
That is a
Jaymes
James Jorsling
That's a
original.
Look who
Jaymes
has a bow
Jorsling
like
original.
Oh,
You know.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Yeah, but it was
I
just
love
weird.
it.
It was just
the
weird
same
seeing your.
signature accessory.
Accessory. But one thing I'll say before that, babe. One
Yes.
thing is, you guys talked about the characters in the movie. The main character, the star of this movie, was fame itself,
Mm.
right? This was an opportunity to see where the desire and journey for fame starts.
Mm.
For all of these people in different backgrounds, whether you're from the hood, whether you're homeless on the streets, whether your father's a cab driver, whether your mother is a stage mom in the making, whatever the thing, you can still light switch go on and you say, I want fame. Then what happens? You want fame, but do you have a skill?
Mm.
Do you have talent? Maybe you do, maybe you don't. One thing I'd say different, everybody didn't get into that school because they had talent,
Mm.
right? Some of them maybe had, potential. Maybe
Mhm.
some of them had, that's why they,
That's why the one chick got in, he didn't do well.
yeah, one of them, she
Yeah,
didn't want to
it's true.
dance. She couldn't dance. She had no business
Mm.
being in there as dance, but something else. Some people have a look and they go, you know what? This person looks like a movie star. Let's try to
Mm.
figure the rest of it out, right?
Mhm.
So there's all these pathways too, because fame is not exactly a career. Fame is not wanting to live and get paid for something, fame is very different.
That's so good, because that, and today people want fame.
Yes,
They
and
want
so-
attention, and that's very different from like what you want to think of, which is like a
Yes.
celebrity.
Which is why she said the
That's-
famous line.
Yeah.
You want fame, fame costs, right?
Mhm.
She's talking about long-lasting fame. If you want it, because you can be infamous, right? And so I think that's the first thing I would say, is that the lead character in this was the 4 years of fame itself and the journey of it. And then some people, did any of them really achieve it?
No,
could
see,
debate
the
that,
only
but-
Leroy at least he had a firm
With Alvin
gig.
Ailey.
Right,
Yes, that.
right.
But other than that,
Right. And the thing was with Leroy had a charisma, which he jumped the line, right? Leroy didn't come in there wanting any of that. Leroy came in there helping out, all right? And somebody else was like, boom, he's got it. He's got it.
And from a, I'm gonna tell you, from a movie perspective though, that was such a obvious setup what they were doing.
yeah.
You know what I mean?
Okay.
Like when they came in together, and you know, she was just so over the
She was
top
the worst.
that
Mhm.
you knew what they were. You knew what was going to happen at some point, because it was, first of all, it's like, what is Leroy even doing here?
But you know what? Let me give you a real life example of what that was a microcosm of. When they were making the movie Juice, it's Tretch who went to audition.
Yeah.
Because Queen Latifah got him the audition. Pac only went with Tretch as his man. But Pac went to a performing arts high school and knew the other stuff. So after
charisma.
Tretch left, Tretch couldn't read on part. Tretch didn't know about acting. It was a hot mess. Tupac went in the room after him and got hired. Right? So he was accompanying his boy, but he had the skill and the charisma, which is what Leroy, may have been presented badly, but Leroy showed up armed for it. He had a look, he had a body, he had a freedom and a couldn't care, which producers and people will go, oh, that's what we need, that's what we want. Whether he wants to do this or not, that's who we want. And so to me, that's the funny thing about fame. This movie to me was, it showed fame ain't promised and you can chase it. Wherever you come from, you can try. You might get it, you might not. Now, what I think, going to the climate, what you're talking about, to me, why this movie is so seminal, and one of the most seminal movies of all time in terms of the arts, is this movie is a microcosm of hip hop. This movie is hip hop. If you go back, Rapper's Delight came out in 1979 in the summer-ish. Summer, fall 1979. This movie came out spring 1980, right next to each other. If you go to the beginnings of hip hop before Rapper's Delight, it didn't take talent to hip hop. Hip hop was who had courage, who could get on the mic, right? You didn't need skill, because all you were doing was rocking the party. You were just like, all the Virgos, all the ladies, all of this, all of that. You didn't tell no story. You didn't make stuff rhyme. You just had the balls to get up in front of a crowd. And the other elements of hip hop were the same thing. With dancing, if you could do the robot or whatever, you did something. If graffiti, if you put your name on a wall. It was initially who has the courage or the balls to do something in front of everybody else. But then what happens when people see that, some people get better at it.
Ovaries. Balls or ovaries.
Balls or ovaries. Balls or ovaries, even though I've seen many women don't say they got, I've never seen women claim ovaries. I see women claim balls, right?
I really did that. I really did that for Aubrey. I did that to annoy Aubrey. I'm not gonna lie. That was 100% to annoy Aubrey.
Because I see women say, I'm the man.
Why are you starting stuff? Like, we were doing good.
Right?
But here, what's happening?
That was just for
Gosh.
I'm sorry, keep going, man. I'm sorry.
I knew what you were doing, but it still worked anyway.
Just starting stuff.
So I'm saying is, so when you start out and you had a crowd and you had people that did something to rock a party that was small time. But then what that does is the more you do anything, people get better at it. People start to distinguish themselves at it, right? That's when a song comes out. Somebody decided, oh, let's make Rapper's Delight. And then that made everybody else see, we can get that from this. If we get better at it, if we chase that, that's fame, right? Rapper's Delight showed rocking the party at a block party. No, 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 no. They're on Soul Train. They're on TV. That rapping can get me fame, right? And so no matter where you come from, you can get there quickly. And so all of a sudden, it became this thing of how do you chase the platform? How do you chase the fame of it? And so this movie kind of sort of did the same thing, maybe not with rap, but with anything else. If you aspired, realize there was no hip hop, there was no internet, there was no MTV, there was no anything. So even if you aspired to play an instrument, I don't know if you chased the fame of it, right? And then if you came from the hood, if you came from the ghetto, if you weren't homeless, if your family didn't have money, all these things, you really didn't think that stuff was possible. You kind of did stuff because you liked it. But then all of a sudden, this movie shows you can come from there, you can be amongst like-minded people, it can be competitive, and it can be fun collectively, not just because all the skills, any skill you have, rapping, instrument, there's so much solitary woodshedding, right? Whatever it is, I don't care if you freestyling, if you drawing or whatever, you do that on your own by yourself. But here it showed doing something collectively, enjoying it, and some modicums of success from it. And so that's when you say about those schools, this showed everybody, oh, wow, this is what pursuit of art can be like. It can, and so all of a sudden you don't see the bad stuff. You don't care that, well, you liked it. You see that Leroy can be
You
homeless.
were so little when this came out, though. That's what I'm
9.
Okay.
Right?
All right.
I was 9.
Okay.
Maybe, but then again, I was 9, but I was in the middle of hip hop. I was in the middle of seeing it on and no, y'all will never get that. One day, rapping was on the radio. Do you understand? That is bananas. Like everything else before that, the radio was Motown, the radio was older people. And when you're 9, 20 is old as hell, right?
Yeah.
Like everything is old. Michael Jackson was the only kid that you saw, and that was for me a cartoon, right? Because Michael was now old. But so kids all over the place saw that and related because hip hop had shown, wow, something you can do now can get you on TV, can get you girls, can get you fame, the word fame. And what's that mean? I want to live forever. Right?
Yes.
I want to learn how to fly. Some of that was whatever I'm doing that's small time. I just exist. I go to school. I live in this house. I got 2 parents. I got 1 parent. We're homeless. We ain't got light. We on welfare. Whatever the we is, all of a sudden you saw in a movie, I can get there and I can have fun. And it made people that had no talent decide, I want to go to performing arts high school. Like,
Okay,
I want
let
to
me
have
tell
that
you
fun. I
something.
want the lunchroom to pop like that.
Let
And
me
you
tell
know
you
what this-
something.
Go ahead.
I enjoy hearing this more than actually watching that movie.
Man,
Because
Say more
everything
about
you're
that.
talking about, I was depressed. It took me like 4 hours to watch this movie.
it
I
took me
kept
a while to
stopping
watch
it.
it as well.
I
It took
was
me,
like,
well, I didn't
what is
stop it.
happening?
I didn't stop it, but I had to keep
Wow.
rewinding.
Rewinding. I
But
was like, all of this,
know.
what I wasn't feeling that from this movie, like, because I can appreciate the time frame, right, when this came out and things that it inspired. Now let me be clear. I did a little theater in high school, the different things, like joined a little theater program on the outside. And really majority of that is because I was imitating my sister. But these things, that were happening in this movie, I wanted it to be more about what was happening in the school. We started getting into these lives, and I think that for me, I was just not expecting that.
Right.
Not that I didn't want it, but
So,
I
sis,
went in
did you
with
have an awareness of the movie? What was your relationship to the movie before you just watched it for the podcast?
Dancing in the Street, Fame, I Want to Live Forever, and I was thinking of Debbie Allen.
But
Okay.
that
was
was from
another
the
thing.
show. That was from the show.
Exactly.
That's the show.
So no awareness.
Right.
Because I was watching the movie like, what Debbie Allen's only here for 3 seconds. What's happening? Right? She had no lines.
I didn't know it was a movie until Janai typed it in the thing. I didn't know.
Really?
Yeah.
So,
Oh,
bro,
wow.
you never heard that iconic line? If you want fame, fame costs.
Well, that's from the
You knew it from the TV show, which is what
it's from the opening of
the TV show.
the TV show.
And I
Yeah,
think
and
that's the
so
difference. You guys
that's
just
it.
explained the difference in not just the TV show and the movie, but the generational gap. When the movie came out, it was more about those lives than the dancing and the performing. It was, I think that's the difference now. I think people go to it because of what the TV show did week to week with all of these songs, all these performances, all of this stuff. But just as a movie, what the movie really more embraced and showed was where people were coming from. The New York, how eclectic it was. Like, so like when I'm telling you, everybody was Black and Hispanic, but my block was fame. The family that had a kid who could dance, but his mother was a drug addict. The other ones who got kicked out and evicted, the this, the that. So that the life of it is what, when the movie first came out, people hooked onto. And then somebody realized, wow, we can sell the arts, the dancing. Nobody went to the movie to see really the dancing. So that's an interesting thing, what time did, you know.
Absolutely.
But bro,
because-
do you remember this television show? Like, did you watch the television show?
I did. The show I watched, but not regularly. But just because it wasn't my age at the time, I think that show was a little bit
Yeah, it came out
older.
in 82.
You know what I mean? So it wasn't considered bad, like you couldn't watch it or nothing. But it just was something that
yeah,
you know, like I would watch sometimes, but it wasn't something that would fully grab my attention. I think mom and dad probably actually watched it.
Mm-hmm.
And I might have guided it in sometime, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But that was my I could remember an episode if you had
Yeah.
Wow.
you know, and I think that that was one thing about the feel of the movie in general that was it kind of felt like a television, like a long episode of TV, just in terms of cinematography and like how it felt more so than watching a movie. You know what I'm saying? And I, that was one of the, and I could tell what they were doing as far as showing the little pieces of all of these people's lives. But I do think it could have benefited from one through line, like a story we were following without taking away from all of the other things that they were showing. But like, if somebody, you could talk about from like a conceptual standpoint, like Jaymes is talking about, like this movie is about fame, you know, it's about the concept of it. But as far as the plot, I don't know what I would say this movie was about. You know what I mean? Like quickly, like I don't know if it's not about this person who does this and you know all the interactions. So
kids matriculating, kind of.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah.
Right.
But even when I think about what really struck me at the beginning, you saying that it was at a budget of 8 million and some change, but it made 42 million. This country is so weird to me because I'm just like, so we were really there was a lot of money that was made off of these very intense, I don't want to use the word tragic, but I want to say intense stories. And I was just like, that to me, and then also wondering the real life part of it. How much did these people that were the ones that made this movie, how much did they make? What did they make from this movie? How much? And then for some of them, I didn't see it. I don't remember seeing any of them in anything else that I've, grown up watching. And so I was just like, or maybe I just didn't see those things that they were in. And so I'm thinking about even that part. But I will never watch this movie again. But I can appreciate what it was what it was showing, because everything is not always happy-go-lucky. When people walk away from situations and circumstances, they have real life. when you leave your job, you're leaving school. There's so many children now when they go home for the weekend, they have no food until they come back to school on Monday. So, you know, it
Or a
gives
hot
you
lunch.
that. Or a hot lunch. Or they don't have a hot lunch. And so I wish that I would have had some sort of knowledge that that's what I was going to come into, because the knowledge you do have about fame, it is from let me rephrase that. The knowledge I had about fame was not any of what I was coming into. And so I was just like, oh, because I like to walk into movies and just be open and kind of learn. But when you have some sort of idea of what you think is going to happen, it changes it a bit, because you're like, okay, I think there's going to be this, but I said, oh no, this movie's making me a little sad.
But I
Mhm.
think,
So-
you said
Mhm.
two things. I wonder, when you say a movie, when a movie is an accidental blockbuster success, right? That's tricky, where, like, it's one thing when Oprah produces Color Purple and you know what it's going to do. You kind of know already, because it has a track record, it has whatever, you're getting stars. But if you're making a movie that you didn't expect to blow up, how do you pay or compensate people who, because contracts don't allow, unless you're a celebrity or a star, for back end residual money, right? They just don't. So if I hire you, if I say, look, I'm making this movie and I think I'm going to make $10 million, I'll be lucky if I make 10. It costs 8, I'll make 10. $2 million is a lot of money. Whoop-de-doo. But all of a sudden, it makes breakout stars and it does whoop-de-whoop. How do I compensate those people? I don't know that answer, even as an actor myself, who I just know contracts and stuff. You get paid a rate, that's what you got paid. If you're a star, you can generate, I want percentage and points and box office this and residual that. But none of those people thought or expected it to do what it was going to do. So that's tricky. And the second thing, I think shows, I think over time does a thing. When we see Glee and when we see all those other shows, they made it more fun and engaging, and they made it what you expected. So the tricky thing is, when you're cashing in on something and doing something, should you change the name and do something else and riff off of it, but move forward? Or are you going to be true to whatever originally it was? Because I think all of different arts and everything, there was a movie called Kids that wasn't about arts.
Oh,
But
that was rough.
Kids was rough,
Ugh.
but it was a lens.
Have you seen that, bro and sis?
You guys ever heard of or
Nope.
seen Kids?
Oh,
That was just a lens into
listen, when you want
the
to have
Lower East
when
Side.
you're having a really great day and you want
Yeah.
to just really come down off of that and feel depressed.
Like Britt said, you will never watch it twice. You won't watch
Never.
it twice. You won't, right?
I've actually seen it a couple times.
Oh,
But
wow.
yeah, so
It's
that
called Kids.
it's the movie that introduced Rosario Dawson.
Rosario Dawson.
actually.
Okay.
I think Chloe Sevigny might have been her first movie too.
Yes,
they should have called it
But
Kids
she-
in Tricky Circumstances.
but
Ugh.
she didn't really do
Right.
do much.
But there's that. There's Hoop
yeah.
Dreams, which is a documentary about basketball. Some of
But-
those things, when they're first, they sink in, tell a story, whatever. But then what they influence,
Yeah.
people take what was liked or successful from that, build on the parts that we can sell and market. So when
Mhm.
somebody sees Fame, right, they go, oh, wow, people love the music and the dancing. Let's make a show and let's get rid of that other stuff. Or let's figure out how to give less of what the people didn't want, what slowed it down.
For me, I didn't have a real expectation one way or the other. But for me, it wasn't that. Like, if you watch Kids is pretty much that tone. Is that movie has that tone for the whole movie, you know.
I'm looking this movie up.
But like, this movie would go from that tone to where it was starting from. They took it real far. For example, with the what was the girl's name? Coco.
Mhm.
And when they were going further and further, I'm like, wow, this is getting deep. In the scene is basically when, she ended up going to the guy's house and figuring out that he's basically shooting, from what we hope, stop that low budget porn. That, you know what I mean? They kind of went away from the scene. They kind of cut away from it. But what I'm saying is that scene was heavy. And going from where you were, you know what I mean? It like, this is a movie where you'll have that, and you'll also have like the random, not random, but the dad coming and playing the main song out of his cab so that everybody starts dancing to it. And like those moments almost felt like they were from different movies for me. You know what I'm saying? And to have them
that's so interesting.
But
yeah.
But the reason why I'm saying it is because of the flow of it, though. It's not that they couldn't. It's just that it would go from one direction all the way to the other direction without a real like feeling for it. You know what I mean? Even when we went to the scene of the main scene where they're singing the title song, it just felt like they just did it. You know what I'm saying? Like it was just, they had been setting up that the dad wanted him to, do more with his music, but the way they actually executed it was just like, all right, we're just going to, he'll just pull up and start.
It was jagged. You're saying it was jagged, which I get, but what interesting thing about that is the funny thing about arts are like, it is that jagged. So like, you look at performing arts high school, most of the kids from the Cosby Show got plucked right out that school while they were there. And yet some of those kids, their high career point was getting pulled out, put in the Cosby Show, and you're all of a sudden you're Theo's best friend or you're Vanessa's boyfriend, and then boom, who knew that you maxed out technically? I'm only saying maxed out career on camera, because you may have went on to have a very productive life, successful, but what everybody knows you for, the high point, is that
the fame
you were whoever you were. Robert, who played Vanessa's boyfriend, he's an actor. He's married to Sally Richardson right now, all of these things. But what do people still know him as? The boy he was plucked out of the 11th grade or whatever grade to play that. So success, or the opportunity, can come when it comes. One of the things they mentioned, I'm curious to know, and I didn't tell it to Janai when we were watching it. Do you guys know who Freddie Prinze was or is?
I meant to Google about that. The Freddie Prinze.
Freddie Prinze came from performing arts. And right after that, the comedy hit ascended. He hit Hollywood. He was got his own show called Chico and the Man.
I've heard that.
Right, show. Chico and the Man. And the fame, the stardom happened. It rocketed so fast. And he was a contemporary with Jimmy Walker, who was on Good Times at the time, playing JJ. A lot of other people that you know now are famous. He killed himself, shot himself in the head. Got to be in his 20s, late 20s or so. But he couldn't handle the pressures and everything. It happened so jagged, so fast, that he literally went from high school to being all over Hollywood to being on this show. And Freddie Prinze, I don't know how old he was when he did it.
He was 22. I'm looking it up now. He was 22 years old.
22. Think about that. He was 3 years out of performing arts high school and had his own show on NBC, and it was the biggest thing. And Freddie Prinze was the man. And he was a comedian, and he was a contemporary of all of these people who went on to have long careers. The George Carlins, the Robin Williams, Jimmy Walker, all those people. He was right. You can look up documentaries on Freddie Prinze, and yet he had demons, and yet he wasn't equipped. And supposedly this school was about grounding you and letting you know, giving you a foundation to have a long career, but also exposing you to the other things in life, because that fame may come quick, it may go fast, all these other things. And so that was what was really, to me, but I guess, again, age gap. At that time, you got to realize you're watching Fame. I'm 9, I knew Freddie Prinze was, because I remember when he shot himself. The news. So there was so many things why, for me, I guess, it's an age gap of Fame wasn't about the singing and dancing. Like the TV show said, we just want to do the singing and dancing.
You know what? I will. I thank you for sharing that, James. I meant to look that up. It's a perfect example of the jaggedness. And I will say, bro, I didn't struggle with the jaggedness because what I thought they were doing was showing us like the way that these kids were living in extremes. Like Leroy, he comes to school when he's in dance class, he's killing it. It's like, oh my gosh, you're so good. He goes to English class, he cannot read.
Can't read.
You know,
R. Kelly is illiterate. You know that. R. Kelly can't read.
see
what I mean? Like
Yeah.
what I'm saying is a singer or performer who can do one thing well.
That's right.
One thing well.
That's right.
But the other things in his life, he didn't, I don't want to say care, he didn't pay attention to in that way. And then I don't know if y'all would know how many people came from those schools that people don't know that story.
Yeah.
So you look at Al Pacino, Robert De Niro, Billy D. Williams, they all went there. We don't know if they could read.
Eartha Kitt, Liza Minnelli, Jennifer Aniston.
Let me tell you something.
It's a long
name. Everybody went there.
So
and
many.
all we know about them really is that they're good at one thing. We know nothing about their life. We don't know if they can read, if they could write, if they had criminal records.
Well, I'll tell you this. I know Leroy's character's tail should have got expelled after he tore up all them bookshelves.
Yes.
I was like, oh, so clearly this is his last year.
But I say,
because he just cost his school $1,000, and I was like, wait.
I went to a high school. I went to Brooklyn Tech, a specialized high school where one of my best friends stabbed somebody in the school. He didn't get kicked out.
You know, I was just gonna say,
Grace is beautiful.
It's like when
I love Grace.
When something happens like that with a child, it's almost like it should be a call to action to me from the school more than a kick them out.
Yeah, I saw guns and all types of stuff in school, and kids got busted without getting kicked out. It's a weird thing, and I guess also I keep saying the times changed.
Yeah.
Now you'd get kicked out. You'd get kicked out now. Back then, I mean, the stuff that went on.
Well, so I definitely understand him still being there, right? Like, don't get me wrong, but you don't see any conversation. Yeah. Like, are there consequences? Are there repercussions? Are there, listen, Leroy, we're going to get you some help. You can't read, but you got to be able to read if you're going to stay here. Like, or other than this English teacher just yelling at him and telling him to write a book report he can't write.
That was another,
what is happening?
Yeah, that was another piece of
how did he get the senior year?
That's the question. How did he get the senior year?
Like, just based off.
They never address it, and they even when you think they're going to address it, like when he was trying to read on his own and stuff like that, they never developed that to understand how what actually happened, and each time you would think you were waiting for maybe the teacher's going to help him or just something from a storytelling standpoint that would make it flow together. But what I will say though is I did get a feeling of, I have movies, I'm trying to think of an example, kind of like House Party, right? Or where there is more than the movie itself, it just captured a feeling of time. And that is what I felt like I was watching, and what I, knowing that the movie was successful, and hearing James talk, I think when I was watching this, must be like, this must just have had a feeling at the time.
Because how old were you when you saw House Party, Aubrey? How old were you when House Party came out?
I guess 13, 12.
It was in your wheelhouse.
12, yeah.
Yeah,
exactly.
So what you're saying is House Party was your fame, the way fame was for me.
That's what I'm saying. I feel like the movie itself capitalized on a feeling. And when I'm talking about like the story, I'm just talking about the technical of how it went together. You know what I mean? Just
right.
But I could also see that if you were somebody in it wasn't surprising to me that the movie popped off. You know what I mean? Because like if it was the 80s and I could see everybody, it was probably different. You know what I'm saying?
Even the diversity that I was reading about, that the diversity in the cast was special at the time.
Yeah.
It showed you what you had never seen before.
Yeah.
That's the thing. It showed you what you hadn't seen. So when you are when you're unrepresented and suddenly you see it, you see you in some way. whether it's the arts or not. Even just, you didn't even have movies or shows that showed high school kids.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't even have that. So all of a sudden, you had people, whether they wanted fame or not, you simply saw kids going through stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and so on so many levels, I think that's what it's later that people who are good businessmen said, no. Singing and dancing works. Let's have a show with that. And then they go, but let's pull back on some of the other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Because I bet you, and I watched the show, it addressed Leroy like Aubrey is saying, addressing the kids with problems when you have time. But in a 2-hour movie, all of a sudden you're stuck in how much time do you want to? 4 years of school, 2 hours, you got a half an hour basically for each year of these kids' lives.
And they chose
Right.
to have 7 or 8 subjects. I mean,
7 or 8
it's a lot.
subjects.
That was the other thing. It was a lot.
So
It was a
much.
lot.
It was
a
a
lot.
lot of people to focus on, and which didn't get me really drawn in with any of them.
And I think
You know
they were
what I'm
trying
saying?
to
You know, it's
show,
so whenever I am looking at a movie that is showing a long time frame, like over time,
Mhm.
I
How do you
always
jump?
I always think of the movie Beaches. Because somehow in Beaches, they managed to go from when these 2 women were children all the way through, you know, well into adulthood. And it worked.
There's 2
So-
women because there's 2 women.
I know, but I'm just saying there's a way to do it. And then maybe it's by
Mm.
not having 8,
Right.
you know,
But
leads. I don't know what the ratio is,
Right.
It
And
was
I
a
wonder if
large
there's a way to
ensemble
do it.
cast.
Right. We'd
You
have to
know.
ask, what was their goal? What were they trying to do?
Yeah.
Right? Because it's like, I think it's about, there's always going to be what we want. Did they give us what we want? Did they fail at what they're trying to do? And I think I get that I wonder if you're trying to show the congestion, the assembly line nature of these kids coming through this, because it happens in sports all the time. There are kids in sports, in schools, who get to college and you go, wait a second, who passed them? How'd they get out to 6th grade?
Mhm.
How'd they get out to 8th grade? How'd they get to college? And it's like, is it the teachers giving up? Is the teachers not caring? Is the teacher saying, well, the world's gonna do right by this person because they're beautiful or because they're talented or whatever? It's a system failing a kid. I think that's what we're saying, is that the system failed this boy that had anger issues and couldn't read.
Yeah.
But
If the movie was
If-
just about Leroy, that might have been interesting.
that would be
movie.
different. But did the system
Absolutely.
fail a kid if
Well,
he went
yeah,
on to become
'cause
a
it-
successful dancer?
Yeah.
Because you could even have, you could still have all these little stories, but if we were just following Leroy through this and then
Or any one of them. I
Any
think
one of them.
Right.
But I think Leroy would have been an interesting
He
one.
would have been
like
interesting.
that would have been an interesting, like if you saw him waking up in the
Especially
morning.
since he didn't even intend to audition.
That's what I'm
Yeah.
saying.
He would have
Like
been
if you could see him going through his day before he even got there,
Yes.
and like just quit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But like it would have gave an interesting thing to kind of keep you anchored. But
Well, let me just because I'm looking at our time,
The
y'all.
last thing I say before I go, though, let me give you this one thing.
No,
I'm
because we're just gonna move on from story
Oh,
because we
yeah.
got to talk about some of the other aspects.
Yeah.
but what you guys are saying,
Mhm.
think about it. In real life, Leroy went to that school and they kicked him out.
He did that actor.
So in real life, what happened is not what happened in the movie, right? He couldn't hack the structure of the school and they kicked him out.
In real life,
But
he
yet
went to
in the
school and
movie,
kicked him.
they didn't kick him out. So that's an interesting, what you're saying,
Yeah.
right? Is that when whatever he couldn't conform to, they're like, well, then you can't stay here. So that
Mhm.
says that the school itself did have some sort of structure and attempts that the movie failed to accurately portray,
Mhm.
you know?
Yes.
And talking about Leroy, he's a great segue to kind of talk about the casting and the actual performances because we've talked about the story now, y'all.
yeah,
I want to invite us to talk about like the actual casting, and I'll kick us off. I gotta say, I thought they were actual kids first of all because we always talk about like
yeah.
They
have-
whoever
yeah.
goes to
Yeah.
Greece,
You
you-
you definitely felt
so
like
these were
They go to
talented
Greece high
young
school.
people. They were
Yeah.
so talented, and I thought the casting was really well done. The only casting I struggle with was with the guy who played you know, the Ralph, the guy who played Ralph. Yeah, because the actor, his name was Barry Miller, and I looked him up to see if he was Puerto Rican.
That's weird.
And I just don't think he was. So because there was so much of the story that was about him working through that, I wish that they had cast that role potentially differently. And again, maybe Barry Miller does have a connection to that heritage, and I just didn't find it with my Google search. But that was the only person. Everything else, I thought I just really appreciated the casting. I thought the acting was really good. I was expecting to see Debbie Allen more because my memory of Fame is the television show.
Debbie Allen.
But I didn't realize that. My memory of Fame, and I don't even want to say memory, but like my understanding of it is the TV show. Because I had a couple of glimpses of the movie in my memory banks because I was telling Jaymes about certain scenes that I remembered. So I knew I had seen the movie. But what I remember more than anything is Debbie Allen. And and actually we have some trivia about that. So Debbie Allen had originally tried out for Coco, and she was rejected for that role.
Really?
But she was cast as Lydia, and Lydia was originally supposed to be Coco's young rival, a student, not a teacher.
Wow.
But what actually happened was they ended up through editing, cutting down that role, essentially to prevent her from outshining Irene, Cara, and the other young cast members.
And doesn't it justify now what I told you? When I watched the movie, right, with her, remember, Debbie Allen was lusting after Leroy.
Yes.
She was licking her lips, biting her lip. And it was like, whoa, this is a bit
You're a teacher.
So a teacher fiending for this kid.
Because she was a student.
But she was a student. So it makes sense now.
Absolutely.
That makes way more sense.
Because it was so uncomfortable. I said, what's happening right now?
Right. She was like, she wanted to jump that student's bones, but she was another student.
But I will say this: I don't even know how
that even makes how she showed up make more sense. Yeah,
I don't even know how this will come across. But I know we're talking about representation. I think everyone was casted well, but there were no Black women in this movie, and so who were actual like. The one that we saw was the one that couldn't dance. That was dancing with Leroy. I don't know what was happening. But in terms of just the main cast, there were not like, this is an African-American.
You don't consider Coco? You don't consider Coco as a Black woman?
Cara, she identifies as an Afro-Latina, but
right.
But it's not what you're talking about this.
Right. No, but absolutely.
You're talking about adults.
Or not even, no, I'm talking about actual children. But even if with her being an Afro-Latina, right, I don't have any issue with that. But I almost think that's cheating, right? That's cheating in the sense of like, we have Black and Hispanic women in this right now, and we put it in one person. And so I just really felt like there weren't, not that we have to have one, let me be clear. We don't always have to have it, but I do want to talk about like we're in Brooklyn and none of these people are like a Black woman that we're like identifying as this Black woman. Yeah. And so that is the one part, and it wasn't even a struggle. It was just something I noticed. It didn't take away from the movie or anything like that. But I thought the casting was amazing. Everybody did an amazing job. And I thought that it was on point. Everybody was extremely talented. Even in the me feeling so low after this movie was done, when they tried to raise me up with the last scene, and I was like, I am depressed. I feel like everybody left and now it's on crack. And so which y'all know, I love to bring up a good crack rock in a movie. But it was, I was just like,
crack rock.
Oh yes, she is.
Oh yeah.
And so, I'm like, oh, everyone here is on a life of drugs at the end of this movie. And so, or doing porn. And so I was just like, oh, what's happening? But outside of that, I was just like, they did a great job of pulling me in to these stories to where I felt the weight. And I think it's important to name that, because everything doesn't always have to end in how, musicals, and y'all know, if you've been listening to the podcast, y'all know my jam is a rom-com. And so everything doesn't always end in that way. Sometimes you are left right there with the breakdown on stage when you're supposed to be doing comedy. You're left right there with you're in a strange man's apartment and he's telling you to take your clothes off. You're left right there with no, you can't read and you should be, you are risking an opportunity with one of the most amazing dance companies in the United States, in the world, really, that you are now on the hinge of not being able to do it because the educational side you can't do. And so, and even in that story, it was a little bit complex. Even when he went, the teacher was all of a sudden, her husband was sick and he went to go see her. And I was just like, oh, there's so much going on. Does anybody's story end? And so
yeah, and that also leading up to the last performance, it kind of took away from the performance for me because it just felt like it kind of just happened. And then at the end, it was like
the credits.
Okay. like wow. So I'm saying
I need a fame too.
So I'm saying
they're working on it.
The performances for me
exactly
were impacted by how the movie was flowing. You know what I'm saying? So like, because I was just having this feeling of, okay, where did this come from? Like for example, the way I know I spoke about before, but we're talking about the performances. The way they set up the Fame, the title song, it just felt wedged into me. Mm-hmm. So because it was just wedged in, when I was watching it, I just had this feeling of, man, this just kind of came out of nowhere. So I couldn't really get, and I know that's not the point, but it's like I couldn't really get into what was popping because it's like, and then even how, like, you think about how this could happen, like turning up that song in that one car with the speakers that could not have been super awesome in that cab, and to just see this whole
had special speakers on top that he had put on top just to do this.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Because the guy knocked the speakers down and started the fight.
Yeah, but I'm saying, that's what made me. Because once they knocked them down, but the sound didn't change. Am I wrong in that?
It didn't change.
Yeah, the sound didn't. So I'm saying it was that was what I was feeling. I was feeling something. I thought it was because of the car speakers, but I think it was because when he knocked the stuff down, it was already a stretch. Like it wouldn't sounded like that. I don't care what kind of speakers you got. It would have, the street would have just been filled with, you know what I'm saying?
Especially at New York Street.
Yeah, but when they knocked out the stuff and the sound didn't change at all, I was like, well, I guess y'all are just not even trying to have this. It's like, okay, this is just a music video in the middle of
the reality.
Mm-hmm. Well, actually, that's a good segue to the music, bro.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna tell you something right now. That Irene Cara, you got it.
She's
Irene
good.
Cara. Yeah. Now she passed away just 2022, I believe.
Recently.
I'm gonna look it up. Yeah.
I think it was 2022 because I looked her up. I was like, man, her voice is amazing. I'm like, man, what did she do after that?
November
and then I saw
2022.
that.
And every boy, including me, was head over heels in love with some Irene.
She's beautiful.
I'm head over heels.
Every boy
beautiful.
Was like, she shot to the top of every boy's dreams.
Even with them bangs.
My age.
I was like, she's beautiful with these bangs.
And boys want to go to school and find their Irene Cara at that performing arts.
But it's so interesting because as much as, again, her talent is apparent, she didn't have like longevity superstardom. No. So fame, her story of fame is interesting. Because she clearly is talented.
I mean, but in her voice, I was wondering if there were times that she sounded like, is it Donna Summers that has that similar type of voice?
Very much
okay. Because I was like, wait, I was confused. I was looking at the movie and I was like, Donna Summers don't look like that. And I was so confused for like 5 seconds.
It's similar. Not only were the voices similar, but that vibe of the songs they had.
Yes.
Donna Summer vibe.
Yes.
And so then you got to look at that time. Donna Summer was already in the lane. So then, okay, What do you, there were all the options, which is tricky about, I wonder, when you show something like that in any arts thing, whether it's Glee now or that then, most of these students are not going to have careers in this. Most of you are not. So I don't even know. I wonder, is that something you tell them? No, because you're encouraging the dreams and you're saying pursue and chase. And at the same time, you're trying to say, I guess we need to teach you other things like English and math and whatever. But most of you are not going to have careers in what you're spending 4 years in this school doing.
Yeah. How do you manage expectations around
And that's life anyway. Most people in college don't get careers in what they make.
Yeah, that's the first thing they said to us. And look to your left, look to your right. Those people will be
Listen,
with
they
you.
will not.
Yeah.
Those people will not. And if it wasn't true, by the end of the first semester of freshman year, there were so many people that were not in my dorm anymore.
Yeah, it was true.
And it was
man.
for a variety of reasons.
Was Doris the first TV groupie? No, I'm joking when I say it like that.
Yeah.
What I mean is, she didn't know that boy when she stepped up to him. Let me get you sign my book, and oh, so you're going on to be this. And then a year later,
He won.
he didn't know who she
Yeah,
was.
that was an interesting, like stuff like that. I think that is what kind of bothered me the most, is that I could see ways that all this could have worked. That you didn't have to take away everybody, anything for real. If you could have just, because that was an interesting storyline of this dude. You can see he wasn't fully leaning into it, but he was kind of feeling it like, yeah, I'm about to blow up. You know what I'm saying? Like, but he wasn't arrogant. But then to see that happen all the way, till later, that could have been a very interesting thing. And it was also things, there was one thing I wanted to say that was interesting to me about just something that happened where the guy was talking. What was the guy's name who wanted to do the electronic stuff?
Barry.
Wait,
that's the actor's name, wasn't it?
Yeah, whoever.
Bruno.
Him.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
keyboard man.
But it was interesting watching him talk about how it was going to be and how it's exactly
playing Bruno Martelli.
Bruno, that's not
yeah, and how he was talking about how it's going to be, and it's exactly like that. You know what I mean? There was another artist, I can't remember his name. Oh man, it's going to kill me. But anyway, there's a video clip of him. It was way back in like the 60s, and he was talking about like, I could see, it was like 60s or 70s. It was like, I see, one person playing to an entire stadium, and maybe they will have some type of recording device, or and I'm just saying it was interesting to see Bruno. So that would, in terms of performances and why it was interesting watching that, because it's like we know the end of what he was doing even more than he does at the time.
Yeah.
And I thought that whoever designed that character that way definitely had some vision about what was going to happen.
Oh, Bruno was right, but I didn't know if that was a good or a bad thing. So that's a beautiful thing. When he talked about, we don't need instruments anymore, because one person's going to be able on a keyboard, play it all and do it all. And that became like a horrible thing. That was the beginning of stopping teaching kids music in schools. That was also a change, the 80s sound. Why those keyboards and things that replaced instrumentation make the 80s music sound the same. Like a very distinct, like auto-tunes-ish, sound. And Bruno was so right in saying, this is the future. But then Mr. Swarovski was right in saying being in an ensemble and learning a craft of an instrument is also necessary. So they were making an incredible argument that would play out over the next 10 years.
And that part of it, I think they did a good job of showing balance. I do, because even though everything was, like I said, very dramatic from one mood to the next sometimes, I do think they did a good job of showing all sides. I just wish it would have kind of went together better, but they did show all sides. And I think that conversation you're talking about is very you know, a good representation of
He
it.
would have been another good central character, because even his home life would have been.
Oh yeah, that would have been another good one.
To see the
Yeah, he would
like,
have
those
been another
parents
good
were
one.
down for him.
Yep,
They were down for him.
And seeing him come up with, you know, stuff in his basement somewhere, that would have been, he could have been a good character as well. But I think that part, like Jaymes talked about, really represents well, because I'm getting some DJ equipment, right? And this equipment that I'm getting is phenomenal, but it's very up to date. You know what I mean? It's very, and what it's going to do is I'm not going to have to do some of the steps that previous DJs did to do certain things. You know what I'm saying? And I think I get I go back and forth about that, because on one way it's like, yeah, that's what's happening. But on the other way, you know, somebody could say to a DJ back then, like, oh, you using records? We only had 8 tracks. You know what I'm saying? So it's like there's always going to be the advancement and people thinking, and another side where it's like, this is how it should really be. And then, you know, the other, and the truth is somewhere in between there. And I'm just saying that I feel like if I was given a positive in this movie, that it shows that the truth doesn't really lie in any extremes in this circumstance. It's somewhere muddy, it's murky, you know what I mean, in the middle of all of this. And I'm just saying, I think that that was one of the perfect examples of that.
Think there's something else to speak to, just even to what you're saying, bro. It's how what fame is now, it has evolved. The platforms have evolved, right? So where at one point you got to move to New York, you got to move to LA, you got to, you know, you have to do these things. No. You need to start a YouTube channel. You get a following on Instagram.
Lucky algorithm one time.
You can't. You know, you find like, I have one TikTok video that has 35,000 views, right? Like, in that moment, I could have capitalized off that. I didn't, because social media is overwhelming. But it's just one of those things where you can go from literally one day. I think about Tabitha Brown's story, where she, in one day, from videos she had been recording for months doing Ubering, and she went in one day to thousands of views by the end of the year, or by the end of that month. A store brand was reaching out to her to be the representative for this particular breakfast sandwich that she had talked about. So I just think about how different, and to also point that out, prior to that, she's been doing acting for years. She had moved out to California twice. And so I think about how these different platforms do make becoming famous very different, where someone had to, you know, live with 17 people and do all these different things and come back and be away. You don't have to necessarily do that same thing. Now, is it a different type of grind? Yes, because where fame is a little, to me, back in the day, having a bit more lasting, a bit more longevity in how it will work. Possibly now, if you're just as good as the video you did last week, right? Like, if you don't do something else the same week or the following week or something to keep up with that, or that is another conversation, right? Is it still the same thing? Is it still that you're just as good as your last movie? You're just as good as your last character. You're just as good as these last things. And so this overarching theme that Jaymes introduced to us at the top, just about fame being its own character and standing there, and the elements of it, of, you know, how bad do you want it, and then how much do you want to keep it, and then also the things that come along with it and what that looks like, and what sacrifices might may have to be made. But how those things all look and how they come together is so different with every generation, and with every, I guess you could say, iteration of how fame looks. And who knows what it's going to be like 10 years from now. You know, what it's going to be.
You have just, you just gave me an opportunity for a trivia, because the movie title Fame there's something about that title that is kind of evergreen. You know what I mean? Fame, even though what it means may morph a little bit, you hear fame, you got a sense of it feels a little timeless. There were other titles though. So the original title was Hot Lunch, but they had to change it because there was a porno film with the same title.
Oh, you weren't joking.
I'm not joking.
It was real. I thought you were joking from from earlier.
Right. And then MGM executives had submitted a list of suggestions. Get ready. Razzle dazzle. Neon green. Break a leg. Glitter. Stage struck. Reach for the sky. Anyway, but it's just this. Anyway,
thank you for whoever came up with fame. Thank you.
No, because all of
sitting here talking about break a leg.
All those titles would have been too light.
He decided to call the film Fame because he asked David Bowie if he could borrow the title of his song Fame off his Young Americans album from 1975, which contains the lyric Fame. What you get is no tomorrow. Fame puts you there when things are hollow. So that's where he got the title from.
But something Britt said, and piggyback on what Aubrey said, was I would wonder with Fame, if you had a school or a film, if you followed the pursuit today and included social media, how are you going to approach and use that to get fame?
Mm-hmm.
If you included other aspects of performance, like when you're talking about DJs and DJ equipment, and how now DJs, maybe 20 years ago or so, DJs became music producers in a way where they jumped all into creating the music, right? Not just playing it also, but creating it too. I can even remember when Questlove used to DJ and play the drums live along to stuff he was playing. And all of those type of, how today would you prepare young people for their future fame, right? How to use the internet, how to use TikTok, how to use, because now even like we throw around this word plant a lot now. Everybody now gets accused of being a plant. This one's a plant, that was a plant. And what they call a plant is someone who showed up and got it all too quickly. So now, are they serving the agenda of somebody else who's funneling money to somehow surreptitiously, send a message? And so now, like the rapper, is it name Ice Spice?
Oh Lord,
Ice Spice. There's a rapper now who's like jumped in.
Generation for me, bro.
So I think it's there's a Spice.
That's her name. Ice Spice is it?
Is a girl?
Yeah, it's a woman.
It's a woman.
Okay,
Ice Spice. That's her name.
She has jumped in, and already she's on the level of Cardi B and Megan Thee Stallion. And people are like, wait a second. At least with the other two, you saw them coming. Megan was always an MC. Cardi B came from a reality show and whatever, but this one jumped up and all of a sudden has hit records, and no one can remember when she was an up and comer. She was just doing the craft. So they're like, no. I don't know whether it's true or not. I don't listen to that music, but people are saying, how did she jump the line? Who's behind her? She didn't prepare. She didn't grind. She didn't do any of those things on the way up to her fame. But who's to say she just didn't figure out her own great shortcut? And maybe in a new fame school, you're teaching how do you make your own shortcut?
Yes. They have to be incorporating these things into curriculums. They have to.
Right.
If they're not talking about social media in terms of like
ups and downs of it,
self-promotion in schools of performance, they're doing those kids a disservice. They've got to be doing it.
And I think in all of our generations, what fame is has changed. It used to be you did something well and got famous for it. Now get famous first, and that may allow you to do something well.
Yeah.
Jaymes Jorsling, Thank you so much for being the very first guest of the Right Perspective.
Thank you.
I do wish your
She was
daughter.
the first guest. I was the second guest.
The
Skylar
second
is
guest.
the first guest.
I wish your daughter had been better behaved today. I'm not gonna lie to you. So
Yeah.
I'm going to invite both of you to leave right now.
Okay, come on, Skylar.
It was so great having a guest, y'all. Gotta
Yeah,
think
was.
about what other guests we might have. But bro, why don't you take us to the vote?
yes, it's not it does not get my leg warmers, but I didn't feel negatively about the movie. I just kind of felt nothing. You know what I mean? So it was like I was like, man, this could be cool. You know, there were times I would completely just lose my train of thought and I would have to rewind. And like I said, but I'm not saying, like, I know this sounds weird, but I don't feel like I had a negative experience. Like it was like, this is just a horrible movie, but it was just so, I didn't feel, you know, so for that, it can't be a classic from my perspective.
Bro, everything you're saying really resonates. I didn't hate this movie. I didn't love this movie. It was one of those movies, I'm not gonna lie to y'all, I didn't really take notes.
Well, because you're running.
There was like, what's happening? I don't
Right.
know. But so, you know, I think that I tried to watch the pilot episode of the television show to see if it had a different feel to it that might have been something that I could embrace. And you know, it was a little better because obviously they were fleshing out the characters more.
Right.
You know, and also for the pilot episode, like the Irene, the Coco character, she was a sophomore. So the teachers already knew her, you know. So in the very first episode, she had a history a little bit, you know. And then Debbie Allen, she's the main, you know, dance teacher. So that was exciting to watch. Because of course she does a great job. So I honestly feel like if we had done the television show, I might or done a combo, I think I might land in a different place. But with just the movie, it didn't strike me as something I would seek out watching again. Maybe I'm just too young because it's not even like it gave me a sense of nostalgia that it was helping me to capture or anything, you know. Now it doesn't mean I don't respect the movie. I respect the movie, but it's not a classic for me. It didn't hit me in a way that was special. And even with all the great context that Jaymes provided and that I found on the internet for the film, it's still to me, I guess what I'm saying is I acknowledge and respect that it has its place, an important place.
Yeah.
For me, it's just not a classic.
You know, the sentiments you both have expressed, like I said at the top of the podcast, I will never watch this movie again. And it's just no way around that. But I will say, right, it wasn't bad, it wasn't good. It was just, I appreciate the moment in time. I can appreciate the stories of it. It's weird because it's like, not even like, oh, the directing was terrible. Like it wasn't any of that. It was the cinematography was really great as well. Like they gave you the dramatic parts that you needed and, you know, all these things, but I just did not enjoy it. And it could be based off of expectation. There may be some that say, your palette for movies is immature. You know, it could be any of those things. And that is fine, 100%. But I just did not enjoy it. But I will say that I appreciate the conversation that develops from it. Now that is something that I love. I love the conversation that comes from it because it's so nuanced and it's so deep. And it can take you into so many different areas just about life and society and what it means and what people are willing to do to make sure that you remember them, to make sure that their name goes down in history. And so with that, I will say it does not give my leg warmer, but I will say that it has my respect. And I will say for the Fame television show franchise, I don't remember watching it. I just remember knowing it. This is one of those things where, you grew up knowing something, but you don't know where it came from, or you knew where it came from, but you've never actually seen it. So even the Forever's like, you want fame cause. Like, have I ever actually seen that episode? The answer is absolutely not. I haven't. And so, but do I know where it's from? Yes. So I appreciate what the show did for society and for culture and those different
It
things.
did make me want to watch the show.
Yes, it did. Absolutely.
I do want to check it out. Even with everything I said, it did kind of make me want to.
It makes it
interesting.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Because the kinds of questions, like, even just some of that deeper stuff of like the pros and cons of having an overbearing parent. And that line between overbearing parent and advocate parent, the piece about being a friend with a person that bullied you, kids and substance abuse. There's just so many little pieces that in a show could get pulled apart. Well, there you have it, you all. Fame, the movie, the original from 1980, is not a classic from the Wright perspective, but it has intrigued us. We will independently and individually investigate the TV show that kicked off in 1982. Thank you all so much for joining us. Thank you for bearing with us. Skylar today obviously was not in a podcasty mood. So thank you for hanging in there with us, y'all. And thank you, bro and sis. Love you.
Love you too. Bye, everyone. Thank you.